Hi guys. So we know that China has been a huge pain in the ass for the entire world, particularly in 2020. So today we'll discuss the most recent controversy that China has created in Hong Kong by introducing the new National Security Act. Now you must be wondering as to how China can legislate or enforce an act in Hong Kong. For this, we need to understand the background story of the relations between China and Hong Kong, and then we'll come on to the contents of the bill and then understand as to why it has created so much controversy all over the world. So, till 1839, for a period of more than 2000 years, China ruled over Hong Kong. In 1800s, Britain started feeling that China is a really important center of trade and has certain lucrative business opportunities, and Britain started interfering in the matters of China. And there were certain illegal trades also that were alleged that Britain is conducting in China. So in 1839, China and Britain went on a war called the First Opium War, which ended in 1841, and Britain won in that war. So the very first thing that Britain did after winning that war was to take over an island in the southeastern side of China called Hong Kong, because Hong Kong was served as a gateway for Britain into China. Okay, so Hong Kong they became a part of the British Empire, and in 1841, formally by signing the Convention of Shunpi, it was made a part of the British Empire. In 1842, a Treaty of Nanking was signed, which ended the First Opium War formally. So for more than 50 years after this, till 1898, Britain developed Hong Kong as one of the most important commercial hubs in Asia. In 1898, another convention was signed called the Second Convention of Peking, which is the capital of China, and Peking is basically the earlier or the older name of Beijing. So Second Convention of Peking was signed, which provided Britain an additional 99 years of rule over Hong Kong. So till 1997, Britain was given to rule over Hong Kong. After a lot of conversations and a lot of negotiations over this matter, Britain and China finally agreed that in 1997, Hong Kong will be peacefully transferred to China, but for a period of 50 years after that, that is till 2047, Hong Kong will retain the capitalist structure it had under the British Empire. Other than the capitalist structure, the other laws that were in force, basically the common law system that was in force, will continue to prevail. The independence of judiciary, a separate legislative assembly, basically a separate government of Hong Kong, a separate flag, a separate currency, all of that will prevail in Hong Kong for a period of 50 years at least. And China agreed to it. So finally, on 1st July 1997, Hong Kong was formally transferred to China, and a mini constitution called the Basic Law was drafted. Now, Hong Kong became a special administrative region, or SAR, in China. Now, what does this mean? So basically, Hong Kong was created under the principle of one country, two systems. Well, what does this mean? It means that there was only one country, which is mainland China, which had two systems now. So Hong Kong was under the second system, where it did not follow the communist Chinese government, which followed the one-party system and did not follow democratic principles, and judiciary was also very much dependent on the whims and fancies of the government in China. Hong Kong, on the other hand, had a separate system with independent judiciary. All the basic fundamental rights were given to people in Hong Kong, and all the basic or important tenets that were under the British rule were enforced for a period of 50 years in Hong Kong. Now, after this 1997 transfer, there have been a lot of hue and cry and a lot of protests that have been made in Hong Kong with respect to the Chinese interference in the affairs of Hong Kong. People of Hong Kong believe that there has been a lot of interference, and as early as in 2014, there was a huge protest called the Movement Umbrella that was taken over for a period of 79 days in Hong Kong, wherein people asked for a more transparent electoral roll, basically a more transparent election system in Hong Kong. This movement got worldwide media coverage and was publicized a lot. Now finally, on 30th June 2020, very recently, Chinese government enforced an act called the National Security Law in Hong Kong. So what does this mean, and why is this act so controversial is something to be looked into. So this act basically divides the offences into four major categories. The first category is secession. Second one is subversion of state power. Third one is the terrorist activities. And fourth one is the collusion with foreign or external forces. So these are the four category of offences under which if anybody is convicted may end up going to jail and in fact may end up serving life imprisonment. And the major problem with this act is that the provisions are so vaguely drafted that literally anybody can be put to jail. Okay, so something such as vandalizing the public property or vandalizing the government offices is an act of terrorism under the new act. Asking for an independent Hong Kong or protesting for advocating for it is an act of secession, or basically colluding with any foreign agency or a foreign NGO and inciting people against the Chinese government is also an offense under the new act. So people of Hong Kong say that this act basically infringes on the right to freedom of speech and expression. This act also states that any person in Hong Kong who is convicted under this act cannot contest in any election. So this is a major criticism of this act wherein people say that the Communist Party is trying to exert its dominance in Hong Kong. So I am also taking a huge risk by making this video because the provisions of this act say that any person or any foreign national who criticizes the provisions of this act or basically advocates for a free Hong Kong will also be prosecuted under this act whenever that person visits China or Hong Kong. So I cannot visit China or Hong Kong in my entire life, I believe now. Anyway, we move on to the provisions as to how will this act be enforced now. So China has created something called a National Security Office under this act, which will have the responsibility and the power to enforce the provisions of this act. Okay, so China will basically look into it by the way of this National Security Office. The government of Hong Kong has also created a National Security Committee under this act, but that will also be advised, or basically an advisor from the Chinese government will be there in that committee as well. So China is trying to exert its dominance over Hong Kong clearly here. Another controversial provision under this act is that if Chinese government or the Chinese courts feel that there are certain exceptional circumstances, then they can take cases from the Hong Kong court which are under this act to the Chinese court. And in case of public order and certain issues which involve state secrets, the hearings will also not be made public and everything will be done in private. Now this also is a major point which basically infringes on the fundamental rights of people. And for your information, Chinese courts have a conviction rate of 99% in case of criminal offences. Okay, so it is believed that the Chinese courts or the Chinese government may try certain people just to settle their personal vendetta with certain people. Okay, there are certain miscellaneous provisions also in this act which says that school curriculum will be taught this new National Security Act now, and any international news agency or any international NGOs will be under close and more stricter scrutiny of the Chinese government. It further states that the Chinese or the Hong Kong police will be given wider power to tap phone calls of people, further infringing on right to privacy of people. So these are certain provisions in this act which have created controversy all over the world. Various leaders all over the world are criticizing the act. Recently, the Prime Minister of UK, Boris Johnson, stated that this is a draconian law and clearly infringes on the fundamental rights of people of Hong Kong. And he will pave a way where millions of people of Hong Kong can get permanent citizenship of the UK and they can permanently go and reside there. The European Union also criticized this act as a clear violation of basic and fundamental rights of people, and China has been criticized a lot for not serving the international principles and international commitments. Many critics also say that this act can further deteriorate the already deteriorating relationship between China and the US. Now that's all about this session. If you have any doubts, you can always mention it in the comment box. You can also write to us on the mail ID that is mentioned in the comment box. You can also have a look at some really important links with respect to this issue that are mentioned in the description box. If you like our sessions, please subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so you don't miss any updates from us.